Okay guys, so once you've done your finishing round, your bottom trim, we're now going to work on our sleeves. And this is the fun part because this is where we create that little puff. So I've already done one sleeve here, and you can see that it just kind of gives it this really regal look with the little puff at the top. And then at the bottom, I haven't snipped off my yarn yet, we just created this really pretty little ruffled edge. It's very, very subtle, and it just creates a really sweet effect. So I am going to take you through how to create your sleeve. We're almost there, guys. Okay, so let's get started on this sleeve here. So my sleeve opening has 39 stitches in total. Now, as always, I always say, if you've got 40 or you have 38, it's not the end of the world, okay? So I'm going to show you where we're going to get started here. I'm going to start us right after we've done these 3 chains here, or where we had the 3 chains. So we've got 1, 2, and 3, okay? Then you can see we started back up to the back there. Now, because this is the right side, I am starting on the side that's closest to the back. When you do the right sleeve, you want to try and start on also the side that's closest to the back. So this is the under the arm. You're going to start on this side here, and this is under the arm. I'm starting on this side here. And I'm doing that so I can try and keep my seam consistently under the arm. And as we move along, you will see what I mean. So let's begin with a slip knot on our hook. And what we want to do is we're going to be using these first couple of rounds of your sleeve. I'm actually going to use just a regular double crochet stitch and just make it a little easier to kind of follow along. So you just want to kind of find where are those chain, remember we did that chain 3 under the arm. Okay, so for me, I can see that's where I stretched over into, see that's my corner. Okay, so that would have been my last chain right there. So I'm actually going to insert my hook right into this little space here. Okay, so I am going to insert and slip stitch to join. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a standing double crochet, and it'll just kind of keep things looking a little bit more uniform. So what is that? You're going to chain 1, then you're going to go back into that same space, and you're going to single crochet. I'm going to try and work over that tail there, just like that. Okay, now what we're going to do is, see this little first leg here? We're going to insert our hook into that and pull up another loop. Okay, so now you can see the height has come up. Then we yarn over and pull through 2. And so that just gives, instead of doing a chain 3, that just gives it a little bit more girth, so there isn't so much of a space there between the chain 3. Now don't worry about this gap. You can always just kind of sew it in a little bit later on. If it bothers you, you can actually go into the side of that stitch just to kind of lessen it. You're still going to have a wee bit of a gap, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to decrease, or we're going to stitch the next 2 stitches together. So we are going to yarn over, insert your hook into the very next stitch here. So for me, because this is where we join, I'm just going to insert it into that space there, and I'm going to bring my yarn through 2 loops like we do in a normal double crochet. So I have 2 loops on the hook, but I'm not going to resolve it. I'm going to go into the very next stitch. I'll yarn over, next stitch, pull up a loop. So you have 4 loops on the hook. You'll yarn over, pull through the first 2 only, and now you've got 3 loops. Now we can yarn over and pull through all 3. So, and you can see they kind of cluster together. So what we've done is we've taken 2 stitches and turned it into 1. Okay, many of you are probably already familiar with the decrease. So we're going to decrease once at the beginning of our sleeve, And then we're going to go all the way around, and then we're going to decrease again just before we get to the chain 3 in the center, okay? But here's what we're going to do between now and then. We want to create this little flared out look so that that's what creates the puffiness there. So now into each stitch all the way around, we're going to place 2 double crochets into every stitch we work into. So we're going to yarn over into the very next stitch. I'm going to place 1 double crochet. Then I'm going to go back into that same stitch and place 2 double crochets. Okay, so again, into the next stitch, I'm going to place 1 double crochet and 2. And because we're placing so many stitches, so even though we did a little decrease here, we're increasing our total number of stitches. So what happens when we increase that much, it's going to cause your work to bunch a little bit. And in this case, that's exactly the look we are going for. Okay, so 1 and 2. Okay, so you're going to do that all the way around, and I'm going to meet up with you when you've got 2 stitches remaining before you hit that, I call it the chain 3 gap, okay? So go all the way around. So that means that you are going to do 2 double crochets into each of the next 32 stitches after you've done your decrease, okay? And if it helps you, just put a little stitch marker where you've done that first decrease, and then when you do the next decrease, we'll talk about that as well, okay? So 2 stitches into each for 32 stitches, and I'll meet you back on the other side. Okay, so I've come around the other side, and you can see how it's starting to ripple and buckle. That's what we want. Okay, so I have 2 stitches remaining before my underarm portion here. So I'm going to do, I'm going to do another decrease stitch, or also known as a stitch 2 together technique. So you'll yarn over it, go into the next stitch, and proceed like a normal double crochet, pulling through the first 2. Then again, we yarn over and we go into the next stitch. Now I'm going to choose to kind of try and nestle it right in there. Pull up, pull through 2. Now you'll pull through all 3. Okay, so, and you can really see that now, it's two together. Now you've got those 3 stitches remaining under the arm, so we're just going to place 1 double crochet into each of those. So these ones just get 1 stitch each. So right there, so that's the bottom of that chain really. So double crochet, and then the next one, and then the last one here. Okay, and now you're going to find the top of that standing crochet, which is right there. That was it was a standing double crochet. So you're just going to go into the top of that, and you're going to slip stitch to join. Okay, so we've done 2 decrease stitches, but we've doubled the amount of stitches going around, but then we've decreased here. So at the end of round 2, you should have 69 stitches, okay? Now, if you end up with 70, not a big deal, okay? So this is just relatively, if you're following exactly along with me, should be 69 stitches, okay? So now what we're going to do is we are going to begin round 2. And for round 2, we're going to return back to our extended single crochet. So we will turn our work, we'll chain 1, turn our work, and now for round 2, we're simply going to place 1 extended single crochet into each stitch. So right now we're keeping our stitch count exactly the same for this round, okay? So we go back to inserting, pulling through one loop and then pulling through two. And that's it, all the way around. Okay, I've just completed row 2 and I have 69 stitches in total. So you can see it's creating that really beautiful ruffle. Now we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. Now for round 3, we are going to decrease back down to start creating that little kind of curved over look, okay? So when we increased, we're creating an expansion here of stitches. Now we want to start decreasing again to just localize the puffed area, so to speak. So what we're going to do is we are now going to decrease into every second stitch, okay? So I've just chained 1. And into the very first stitch, what I want to do is I'm just going to place my usual extended single crochet. So that's counts as 1 stitch. Now the next 2 stitches, I will stitch them together. So what I'm going to do is I'll insert my hook and I'll pull through 1 loop as usual, but I will not resolve this. I'll go into the next one, pull up through 1 loop. Now I've got 3 loops on the hook. I'll yarn over and pull through all 3. So you should be kind of familiar with this technique right now, the decreasing. So now you're just going to continue in that fashion. 1 extended single crochet into the next stitch, and then into the next 2 stitches, we will crochet them together. Okay, so you pull through all 3. Okay, so go ahead and do that. And at the end of round 3, you should have 46 stitches. Okay, now I'm coming up to the end of round 3, and I've just completed a decrease, a 1 individual stitch, and I've got 1 stitch left. It's not the end of the world. I'm just going to place 1 extended single crochet, and now I'm just going to slip stitch to the top of that very first stitch. Okay, and round 3 is complete, and you can see that it's starting now to kind of shape inwards, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so now I have 46 stitches. As always, if you have 45 or you have 47, don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world. So we're going to begin by chaining 1 and turning our work, okay? And we're going to begin right away with that decrease. So going back right away into that very first stitch, you'll pull up a loop, pull through 1, and then into the next stitch, pull up a loop and pull through 1. So you should be really getting comfortable with these decreases and pull through all 3. So we're only going to decrease at the beginning, and then once we come back to the very end. Now for the rest of the round, you're just going to continue placing 1 extended single crochet into each stitch until you have 2 stitches left in the round, okay? And then you will decrease those last 2 stitches, or you're going to stitch them together, however you want to call it. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and I will meet you back up at the end of round 4. Okay, I have 2 stitches left here, 1 and 2. Don't let this one fool you. That's where we slip stitched, right? So we are going to insert as usual and stitch these 2 together, okay? Then at the end, I'm going to slip stitch to the top of my very first stitch there. I'm going to slip stitch to join my round. So at the end of round 4, I now have 44 stitches. I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. And for round 5, we're going to do the exact same thing. You will start with a decrease and then do 1 stitch all the way around and end with a decrease. So I'm not going to go through it again with you, but you should be very familiar with that. So at the end of your round 5, you should end up with 42 stitches. So we ended up with 44 at the end of round 4. the end of round 5, you should have 43 stitches. So I'll meet back up with you when you're ready to start round 6, as we will add something slightly different to our decreases. Okay, I've completed round 5 and I now have 42 stitches. So just kind of put that down so you can kind of see that the puff is now really taking shape there. So, and then once we decrease even more, it'll become much more prominent. So now we're going to start round 6 and we're going to add one more decrease. So we are still going to decrease at the beginning and we're going to decrease at the end of our round. But now we're going to add one more decrease just at the top of the sleeve here. And that's just going to help to kind of curve it in a little bit more with just a bit of subtlety. We don't want it to be too dramatic at this point. So what we're going to do is you're going to begin with a decrease as usual. So you'll chain 1. Whoops, I got to turn my work. And then I'll do a decrease right away. Okay, and now I'm just going to continue to do one extended single crochet until I get to my 21st stitch. So I will do 20 stitches, and then in the 21st and 22nd stitch, I'm going to stitch those two together. Okay, so really important, stitch number 21 and 22, you're going to stitch those two together. You'll then continue on to the end of your round and then decrease at the end. Okay, so at the end of round 6, you'll have 39 stitches. You will do the same thing for round number 7, and that should give you a total of 36 stitches at the end. Okay, as always, if you're off by 1, don't worry about it. So pause the video. I'm going to go ahead and finish round 6 and 7. And I'll meet you back up when we begin round 8. Okay guys, so at the end of round 7, you can really see that we formed that nice puffed area here. So we are continuing to decrease because we want to create now the rest of our sleeve. So that's what we're aiming for here. So now we're going to be doing the same thing for round 8, 9, and 10. So let me just chain 1 and turn my work. Now for round 8, 9, and 10, you will be decreasing into every 5th stitch. So you'll go right away into that first stitch. So you will stitch up 4. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, now into stitch 5, you're going to stitch 5 and 6 together. So you're going to decrease. So there's stitch 5 and there's stitch 6, and you stitch them together. Then you continue again, 4 stitches, decrease, 4 stitches, decrease. And that's what you're going to do for the next 3 rounds. So at the end of round 8, you should have 29 stitches, of course, give or take. And then at the end of round 9, you will have 24 stitches. At the end of round 10, you will have 20 stitches. So I'm going to meet back up with you once you get down to at the end of round 10, and just to check in with you. Okay, so just pause the video and do your next 3 rounds. Okay, so I have completed round 10, and that is how your sleeve is forming. Now, actually, if you wanted to keep this a little bit more of like just a short puff sleeve, you could actually stop your sleeve right there, and that would look super cute for a late spring cardigan. But we're going to continue on and finish the whole sleeve for this project. So now what's going to happen for round 11, 12, and 13 is you're simply going to place 1 stitch into each stitch all the way around. You'll slip stitch, chain 1, turn your work, and repeat. So that's for the next 3 rounds. And I'm going to just put up a little list here up on the screen of your rows, just so that you can visualize it a little bit easier. So for rows 11, 12, and 13, it's 1 stitch into each stitch. You will still end up with 20 stitches. When we get to round 14, you will only decrease at the beginning of your round. So when you chain 1 and turn, you're just going to decrease those 2 stitches together and then simply continue on doing 1 stitch into each. This should now bring your count down to 19 stitches at the end of round 14. For rounds 15, 16, and 17, you will simply just place 1 stitch into each stitch. You will still have 19 stitches at the end. In round 18, you will now do a decrease at the end of your round. So in round 18, you will place 1 stitch into each all the way around, but in the last 2 stitches of your round, you will decrease those 2 together. This will bring your stitch count down to 18, which is funny enough, it'll be round 18. Then you will continue on for round 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. And you're simply going to place 1 stitch into each stitch all the way around. So what I'm going to do is I will meet back up with you when you've completed round 25, and we'll now be getting into the wrist cuff area, and I'll talk you through that. So definitely pause the video, and I'll put a little screenshot actually up here of the round by round instructions. So that'll be really great for you to be able to reference. And I will meet you back up at round 25. So I have completed round 25 and my sleeve is looking like this. Just love how that puff just really sits so prominently there. So now we're almost done, guys. So for round 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, and 32. So basically from round 26 to 32, we're going to continue placing 1 stitch into each stitch, but we are going to go down to a single crochet. Okay, so this is just to kind of give a little differentiation towards the cuff without being too dramatic. So if you'll notice in this sleeve here, you can see that the extended single crochets are here. And then in the last several rounds, we go down to a single. So you can differentiate it, but I wanted it to be very, very subtle. Okay, super easy. So when you finish round 25, just chain 1, turn your work as usual. And then you're going to go back into that same stitch. And this time when you pull up a loop, you're going to yarn over and pull through both. And that is what you're going to do for the next several rounds. So go ahead and do that, and then I will meet back up with you when you are ready to do round 33, which is our final round, and that is where we're going to add this sweet little, very, very tiny little ruffled edging to your cuff. And I have now completed round 32, so my sleeve looks like this. Really, really pretty. Okay, the last and final touch is that little ruffled trim, and it is very, very easy. So once you chain 1 and turn your work, this is what we're going to do for that little final trim. You're going to single crochet to the first stitch, then you're going to chain 2 and you'll single crochet into the next stitch just to create a little bump like that. Then you chain 2 and single crochet, and that is what you're going to do all the way around. You can see that it's already starting to kind of bunch up there, and that's exactly what we want. So you always chain 2 and single crochet, chain 2 and single crochet. And you do that into every single stitch, and you can see how it's just very, very subtle, but oh so pretty. So you'll do that all the way around. You'll slip stitch to join at the very end, and you'll weave in your ends, and your cardigan is almost complete. And so when you're done one, make sure that you go ahead and do the same thing for the second sleeve. Follow the same instructions. So remember, press pause and rewind to how we began the sleeve. And I'll put a timestamp in the description box down below so you can repeat that. I got ahead of myself because I've already done my sleeve. So when you finish the sleeve, go ahead and do your second sleeve. Then meet back up with me. And for the final touch, we're going to do a little ruffled collar and add our buttons. Okay, so we're almost there. See you back here in a little bit. Okay, we are ready for our final touch, and that is our collar here. So we've got the two sleeves completed with the beautiful little cuff, and I have just enough yarn left to make the collar, which I'm very excited about. So you're going to place a slip knot on your hook. Make sure, first of all, that your cardigan is facing right side out. And now we're going to start in the what would be the right panel. So if you're wearing it, it's the right panel this way. So you just want to find that very first stitch in the corner here. So remember, we did 3 stitches in the same stitch. So that's the very first one there. So I'm just going to insert my hook there like that. Okay. Then you're going to chain 1. And we're going to place 1 extended single crochet into each stitch. So right in the very first stitch, we'll go back in and extended single crochet. That's 1. And you can work over that tail or weave it in afterwards. I'll just weave it in afterwards just so that it stays nice and clear for you guys. So I'm going to work my way all the way until I get to this little bend here. And then I'm just going to talk you through what we're going to do there. Okay, so we're working into the full stitch. Okay, so I've worked 5 stitches in, and this is where I'm coming up to that first little bend in our neck opening. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to place 1 extended single crochet, so 6 stitches. And now I'm just going to stitch 7 and 8 together. So I've got 7 and 8 together. Okay, so now it's just going to round out that little edge there. So then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to place 1 extended single crochet into the next one. Okay. 1 into the next stitch. So you've done 2 stitches. Now we're at the corner, so we're going to stitch together this one and this one. So right in the corner. So that's 1, and that is 2 together. So I'm just trying to soften that edging right there. So we did 6 stitches from the start. We crocheted together stitch 7 and 8. Then we did 2 more stitches. And then we did the third and fourth together. You're now going to go across the back, and you're going to do 1 stitch all the way across. Okay. And when you come to your corner stitch, you're going to stitch the corner and the next one together. Decrease, then you stitch 1 into each of the next 2, and then you do the same thing right there, and then you do the last 6 stitches going across. Okay, pretty straightforward. So I will meet up with you once you've done your first round of your collar. Okay, at the end of round 1 of your collar, you will end up having 32 stitches in total. Okay, and so now your collar is just starting to kind of soften up around the edges there. Okay, so now your collar is starting to just really round out very nicely. So now for round 2, 3, and 4, you're simply going to place 1 stitch into each, and you're going to do that all the way around, 1 stitch into each stitch. You're going to go around to the end, chain 1, turn your work, come back around, chain 1, turn, and do that again. Okay, so you'll still have 32 stitches, and I'll meet back up with you when you have completed your 4th round. Okay, once you've completed your 4 rounds of your collar, you're going to have something that looks like that. And now we're ready to add on that beautiful little trim there. Okay, so it's just meant to be kind of like that Victorian type of look. Very, very princess-like, in fact. Okay, so what we're going to do is pretty much the exact same thing we did for our cuffs. Okay, so you're going to chain 1. And you'll place 1 single crochet into the very first stitch, and then you're going to chain 2, and you're going to place a single crochet in the next stitch, chain 2, and single crochet. And that is what you're going to do all the way around. And I will meet up with you when you have completed your 5th round here. Okay, so I have completed the last round, just snipping off my yarn here. And then I'm going to weave in this end. Okay, and so our collar is complete. So it's just this nice little rippled edge here. So pretty. Okay, and now the mom of this young lady that I'm making this cardigan for asked that I only place 1 button just around the top there. Now, normally for a cardigan, I would put at least 3 big buttons or 5 medium buttons. And in fact, this one would call for medium buttons because the natural openings here are what fit medium buttons. And this is the other great thing about this design. You don't have to specially create buttonholes because the edging right here already has the spaces for the buttons. So that would be the last thing I would recommend you do. You're simply going to place your button where you would like it, and then just sew in your button back and forth. Now this is where you want to make sure that you use a thread needle and thread, because your typical darning needle is a bit too thick. Okay, so you just want to be really aware of that. Okay, so I'm going to weave that end in, and then I'm going to place my button. Now, and the size button I'm using for this project is an 18mm button. Okay, really important. If you go any bigger, it won't fit through the natural holes here that were created. See, so that fits just perfectly. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then weave in my ends, and my Pretty in Puffs cardigan will be complete. And voila, here you have it, the Pretty in Puffs cardigan, fully complete with the collared, the ruffled collar here and the button to go. We've got our puffed sleeves and our tapered cuff line here with the beautiful little detail, and I'm so happy with how it came out. And we got a chance to work on a new stitch, which was the extended single crochet, just a slight variation on a really, really simple stitch. And I'm so excited with how this came out. Now, if you're partial to the written pattern, as I mentioned before, I do have this in my Etsy shop, so I will leave a link for it in the description box down below if that is your preferred method of following along. And it accompanies this video. So thank you so much, as always, for coming along on my crochet journey. I really do love sharing these projects with you all. And remember, if you are new here and you have not yet subscribed to the channel, I really invite you to do so and to click that notification bell. And that way you'll always be updated every time I upload a new project. And if you like this type of crochet project, please do make sure to leave me a thumbs up. That way I'll know to continue making more of these types of projects. All right, guys, as always, take good care of yourselves. Happy crocheting, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.